The sedan was hooked and ready to haul. James shifted into gear, but then the CB radio crackled to life.
Don't take the car. He's still inside.
Who is this? Some kind of sick joke?
He keyed the mic, but only static returned. James pulled his coat tighter and walked back to the disabled sedan. The keys hung in the ignition, exactly where he'd left them. He pressed his flashlight against the rear glass. The back seat was spotless, the upholstery clean and cold. He unlatched the trunk and the lid sprang up. The space was bare except for the spare tire and a cheap jack. Nothing moved.
Nothing. There's nothing in there.
He stood there, the warning pulsing in his head like a second heartbeat. Then he climbed back into the rig, dropped it into gear, and pulled onto the dark highway. For the entire drive, the radio stayed dead. But in the rear view, the black tree line seemed to shift, as if something was keeping pace just out of sight. James pulled into the impound lot. The yellow floodlights buzzed overhead as he backed the sedan into an empty slot.
Another night, another ghost car. But that voice wasn't a prank.
He logged the tow in his notebook, make, model, plate. But he paused before writing the caller's name. The GPS still showed mile marker 47, a stretch he'd worked 100 times. Tonight, it felt different. He thought of Mike, the old driver who trained him. Mike came back from Highway 9 once pale and silent, and never took another night call.
Mike always said, "Some roads ain't meant to be driven after dark." Never explained.
Then there was Elroy. Towed a sedan from the same marker and disappeared. No goodbye, just an empty locker.
Tall tales. Superstitious old drivers. Nothing more.
James climbed into the cab and radioed dispatch. Linda's voice crackled back. "You are earning hazard pay tonight, Hartley." He pulled back onto the highway. Somewhere in the dark, another call waited. James just hoped it would be different. 20 minutes later, the CB crackled to life again.
James got a call from a woman, Sarah. Car died on Highway 9, mile marker 82. She said she heard something in the woods, then the line went dead. She sounded terrified.
10 to 4, Linda. On my way.
Highway 9, 30 miles north of the previous hookup. James felt the same cold prickle he'd felt earlier.
Another dead zone. Another abandoned car.
He checked his phone. No signal. The stretch was notorious for dropped calls and muffled screams that never got explained. He pressed the accelerator. The headlights cut a tunnel through the thick fog. He could almost hear that woman's voice in the static. Breaking apart, his fingers tightened on the wheel. He wasn't sure if he was heading toward a rescue or something else. The GPS showed the marker approaching. The road ahead curved into blackness. The tow truck's headlights swept across a battered Toyota Corolla slouched on the shoulder. Its engine hummed, but no one sat inside. The driver's door hung wide open, the dome light casting a weak yellow glow onto the empty seat.
Sarah, anybody out here?
Only the wind answered. James leaned into the Corolla, spotting a purse on the passenger seat and a phone wedged under the brake pedal. He picked up the phone. The screen still showed a 911 call, connected but silent. The timer was still counting.
She called for help, then just vanished.
His flashlight caught a line of footprints pressed into the damp leaves, leading toward the tree line. He followed them 20 yards into the woods until they simply stopped. No return tracks, no sign of a struggle. Just a clean, open patch of earth. He trekked back to the rig and hooked up the Corolla, leaving a note under the wiper. Towed by Hartley. Call if you are out there. As the impound lot's floodlights came into view, James couldn't shake the image of those disappearing footprints. Some roads don't just swallow phone signals, they swallow people. James couldn't sleep. The stillness of the lot pressed down on him like a held breath. He threw off the blanket and sat at the tiny desk, opening his laptop. He typed Highway 9 disappearances into the search bar. The results poured in. Missing hikers, phantom cars, and one thread titled The Ghost Mile Marker, a forum post from 5 years back. My brother towed a car from mile 47 and quit the next day. The CB warned him off. A news photo showed a grim tow operator beside mile marker 47. The headline read, "Quits after strange highway encounter." James cross-referenced employment records. Mike left 2 months after that article. Elroy didn't last a week. He pulled on his boots and headed for the rig. The office suddenly felt too quiet. He slid behind the wheel and keyed the mic.
Linda, those 2 drivers I replaced, Mike and Elroy, they both got calls on Highway 9 right before they quit.
Both of them, James. Same stretch of road. Same kind of calls. I tried to keep you off that run, but dispatch overrides. Mike came back from that highway carrying a woman's shoe. He wouldn't speak for days.
The shoe belonged to a woman reported missing 3 weeks earlier. Mike had found her body half a mile from where he'd towed a sedan. The same black sedan James just hauled.
He never drove again. Had some kind of breakdown.
That's what the CB warning meant. The car was a coffin delivery.
Elroy. After he quit, he just vanished. Left his truck idling at a truck stop 6 months later. They never found him.
Why didn't anyone warn me?
I tried, James. When I saw your name on the call sheet for Highway 9, I almost radioed you to turn back. But it's not something you can prove. Just something you survived.
I am not running, Linda. I didn't last 20 years on these roads by turning away from trouble.
He hung the mic back on its hook. The radio fell silent, but the threat lingered like a low hum. Somewhere down Highway 9, past the ghost mile marker, a black sedan and a waiting grave had already claimed 2 operators. James was determined not to be the third. A week slipped by without incident. Then, at 2 a.m., the CB crackled to life like a warning bell.
James got another one. Mile marker 47. Male caller. Lots of static. Asked for a tow. Then the line went dead.
Play me the recording, Linda. I need to hear it.
Help. Car died. I am at the old marker.
That voice. It's the same one from the cold open, and it almost sounds like my own.
His stomach tightened, but he reached for the ignition. He told Linda he wouldn't run. He meant it. The headlights swept the empty lanes as he drove toward mile 47. Fog rolled across the asphalt, and the GPS counted down the feet. 300, 200, now slowing. He spotted the silhouette of a sedan on the shoulder. Exactly where he'd found it, the first time. James killed the engine and sat still. He could almost hear that voice repeating from the dead air. James stepped out of the cab. The gravel crunched under his boots as he approached the silhouette. The sedan sat gleaming. No dust, no dew. As if the night had washed it clean and set it here for him. The driver's door swung open before he touched it. A cold current of air rolled out, smelling of nothing. He forced himself to look. The keys in the ignition were melted into the switch, fused like they'd been struck by lightning. His flashlight beam trembled as he swept it across the dash. The radio hummed a low, unbroken tone. The registration sticker looked brand new, dated today. It bore the name Sarah in fresh ink.
He shouldn't have towed Sarah's Corolla. This was the same car, reborn for the next victim.
He stepped back, scanning the tree line. No one. Just the car and the dark. He walked back to the rig and lowered the winch. The hook swung inches above the asphalt. The cable groaned, and the sedan rolled silently onto the flatbed. Whatever this car was, he wasn't leaving it here. James climbed into the rig, pulling the heavy door shut. The cab felt smaller tonight, the shadows deeper. Before he could touch the ignition, the CB speaker erupted in a spray of static, and a voice that wasn't Linda's.
You shouldn't have come back.
James snatched the mic, pressed the button. Nothing. No green light, no carrier signal. The radio was stone dead, as if the voice had drained the last volt from the battery.
It's not just a warning. It's pinpointing me. It knows I took the car.
His hands trembled on the wheel, but he forced the key into the ignition, and the engine caught. He pulled away from the shoulder, the sedan's weight dragging behind him like an anchor. For 10 miles, the CB stayed silent, but the air in the cab grew cold, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every few seconds, his eyes flicked to the mirror, but the dark flatbed revealed nothing, except, just once, what might have been a breath of fog that had no business being there. He backed the sedan into its slot at the impound lot. The floodlights cast long, trembling shadows across the gravel. He stared at the trunk. Something nagged at him. When he'd checked it before, it was empty. But now it felt heavier, somehow.
The car changed itself. Maybe it's hiding something now.
He popped the trunk and lifted the spare tire cover. Underneath, a small, weathered notebook lay pressed against the wheel well. He opened it to the first page. "If you find this, I am gone. Don't let him take you too. RH." The pages that followed were frantic scribbles about a shadow man on the highway, how it takes people, and the car always comes back.
Proof. Someone else was trapped in this loop. He was trying to warn the next driver.
He stared at the initials RH. They felt familiar, like a name he'd seen in a file somewhere. He tucked the notebook into his jacket. This wasn't just a warning. It was a last testament. He had a name now, and a target. Somewhere on that dark highway, a shadow man was waiting, and James intended to find out why. James drove straight from the impound lot to the dispatch office. The fluorescent lights buzzed as he pulled up the missing persons database. He typed R. Holloway, Highway 9. The screen resolved to a missing person flyer faded by 3 years of dead ends. The photo showed Richard Holloway standing beside a black sedan, identical to the one sitting in the impound lot. An adjacent news article from the same year covered a tow operator who quit after a ghostly encounter and mentioned Holloway's disappearance in the second paragraph. He cross-referenced the name Sarah from the sedan's registration sticker. Another missing person, vanished 2 weeks ago. Same mile marker. He pinned both printouts to the corkboard. 2 names, 1 mile marker. The same black sedan glowering behind them both. He stepped back. The car wasn't just haunted. It was a lure that traveled through time, marking its drivers as the next missing person.
The CB voice wasn't a threat. It was a warning from the last person who fell for it. He wouldn't disappear like Mike and Elroy. He'd break the cycle or die trying.
He looked out at the dark highway through the window. The next call would come, and this time he'd be ready. 2 nights later, the CB shrieked at 2 a.m. Linda's voice broke through, heavy with dread.
James, it's that same call again. Mile marker 47. Male voice just says, "Please help. I am at the old marker."
I know that voice now. It's Richard Holloway, Linda. Note my GPS and keep the line open.
He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a hunting knife, its blade glinting in the dashboard's pale light. He mounted the phone on the dash, recording app open, and tied the knife sheath to his belt. The GPS arrow pulsed at mile 47. He pulled out of the lot and headed into the black tunnel of trees. Silence filled the cab. He rehearsed what he might say to a ghost, how to demand answers.
You are not the victim tonight. You are the interrogator.
The fog thickened as he approached, the headlights barely carving a path. Then, a shape resolving out of the gray. He killed the engine. The outline of the black sedan came into focus, waiting for him like a patient spider. James stepped out of the cab, the crunch of gravel loud in the dead air. The sedan sat 30 feet ahead, but this time its interior wasn't empty. A translucent figure sat in the driver's seat, Richard Holloway's ghost. His eyes were fixed ahead, his form flickering like a bad signal. James moved closer, his hand resting on the knife. The ghost didn't turn, didn't blink, but the radio inside the sedan began to hum.
You found my note. You know what it wants. Don't let it take another.
The ghost raised one pale hand and pointed toward the tree line. James followed the gesture, his flashlight beam wavering. At the edge of the woods stood a shape, taller than a man, utterly featureless, darker than the night around it. The Shadow Man, a cold whisper, slithered out of the dark, curling around his name like smoke. James. James's breath caught. The Shadow Man didn't move, but the space between them felt like a tightening noose. He grabbed the CB mic and choked out, "Who are you? What do you want?" The speaker only crackled with static. The Shadow Man took a single step forward, and the night grew colder than a dead breath. James's mind shrieked run, but his legs stayed locked. James's legs unlocked with a spasm of adrenaline. He spun and sprinted for the rig, gravel spitting under his boots. He wrenched open the door and threw himself into the seat, stabbing the ignition. The engine coughed once and died. Through the rear window, the shadow man floated between the trees, its form eating the fog. No footsteps, just a closing void.
Go. Run into the woods. It won't follow you there, not if you don't stop.
James didn't hesitate. He shoved open the passenger door and plunged into the tree line, branches lashing his face. Behind him, a muffled whump, then a roar. The tow truck exploded in an orange-black bloom, raining glass and diesel. He ran blind, one arm up to shield his eyes. The shadow man's silence was worse than any pursuit. He felt it slide through the dark, never tiring. Finally, he burst onto asphalt. A different road, a county lane. His lungs burned. Headlights appeared in the distance. James staggered into the beam, waving both arms. The car swerved, stopped. A man's voice called out, "What the hell happened to you?" He looked back. At the forest edge, a tall silhouette watched, motionless. Then it dissolved like smoke into the undergrowth. An hour later, James sat across from Deputy Mills at the sheriff's station, his hands still quivering from the cold. He placed the worn notebook and his phone, smeared with ash, on the metal table.
So you are telling me a ghost in a sedan blew up your tow truck, and you saw some kind of shadow man?
James pressed play without a word. Holloway's voice spilled from the tiny speaker, then the CB warning, then the dry whisper of his own name. Mills's face went pale. Within the hour, a search team rolled out to mile marker 47. The charred shell of James Riggs still smoldered on the shoulder, but the black sedan had vanished as if it never existed. A K-9 unit led them half a mile into the woods. The dogs stopped at a shallow depression covered in damp leaves and old pine needles. They uncovered a skeleton dressed in a dark jacket, the fabric rotted but recognizable. A wallet in the pocket carried an ID. Richard Holloway, age 26.
3 years. Nobody even knew he was back here.
James stood at the forest edge as the remains were carried out, his fists clenched. He'd been the one to finally bring Holloway home after all this time. By midday, news vans flanked the station. A deputy handed James a water bottle and muttered, "They want a statement. You don't have to say anything." James stared at the cameras gathering outside. He'd escaped the shadow man, but the story was about to swallow him whole. The press conference began under harsh lights. James stepped to the microphone, his scraped face pale. Deputy Mills stood at his shoulder, jaw tight.
I saw the ghost of Richard Holloway, and I saw the thing that took him. A shadow, a tall, hollow shape that feeds on fear. It's still out there, and it uses a black sedan as its bait.
A storm of questions erupted. Some called him a hero who solved a cold case. Others murmured about hallucinations and PTSD.
We are investigating the remains found and the circumstances of Mr. Hartley's vehicle destruction. The department will not comment on paranormal claims.
By evening, the tow company issued a statement. Mr. Hartley is no longer employed with us. We wish him well and thank him for his service. He scrolled through the online comments. "It takes a ghost to bring justice," read one headline. Below it, a thread called him a burnout case. James set the phone face down. The loss of his rig, his job, his reputation, it all felt lighter than the weight of the secret he'd carried.
I told the truth. Whatever comes next, at least I am not hiding anymore.
Deputy Mills found him afterward, offered a hand. "You did the right thing, even if it cost you everything." As dusk fell, the empty highway stretched on, indifferent to one man's revelation. But somewhere past mile 47, a cold wind stirred the tree line, and a faint static hum carried on the air. The call came 3 days after the press conference, a voice he hadn't heard in years. Mike, the old driver who'd broken down years ago. They met at a diner off Highway 9. Mike looked older, haunted, his eyes dull as old pennies. He pushed a notebook across the table, the same one James had found under the spare tire. Mike's whisper, he'd seen the shadow man too. After towing that sedan, it followed him for weeks, too terrified to tell anyone.
So the curse isn't random. It marks you for next time.
Mike leaned in. The shadow man feeds on fear. The car returns to be noticed. Never answer a call from that mile marker after midnight.
And you lived with that secret for years. Never told a soul.
His hands trembled around his coffee. Mike said James had done what he never could, broken the silence.
I am done hiding. But no more midnight calls. That's the rule.
He drove home. The highway stretched empty. For the first time in weeks, he didn't look back. 3 months after the press conference, James's phone rang with a job offer. A midnight patrol shift, starting that very night. The pay would clear his debts. But the shift, midnight to dawn, made his stomach twist like a wrung rag. Before he could answer, his phone cut out and a second call forced its way through. Static, then a young man's voice, hollow and familiar.
Help. Car died. I am at the old marker.
The words were exactly the same as before. Help, car died. I am at the old marker. James felt the cold crawl up his spine like frost.
He's still trying to reel me back. Every midnight call, every abandoned car, it's the same bait, waiting for me to bite.
His thumb jabbed the decline button. The static died, and the cab fell silent, leaving only the hum of the idling engine. He called the company back and told them he wouldn't take the job, that he couldn't run night shifts anymore. Instead, he bought a service truck and painted Hartley's Mobile Repair, days only, in bold letters across the door. No calls past midnight. No more tow hooks on Highway 9. Some rules, once carved into the bone, didn't wash away. A year to the day after Holloway's remains were found, James parked his service truck on the shoulder of Highway 9. The mile marker stood alone in the fading light. He carried 3 small wooden crosses he'd made himself. One for Holloway, one for Sarah, one for the others, whose names only the woods would ever know. He knelt in the gravel and pressed each cross deep into the earth, a few feet from where the black sedan always waited.
Rest now. You've warned enough people. I heard you.
He stood and walked back to his truck. As he reached for the door handle, the CB radio, long set to scan empty channels, crackled to life.
Thank you.
The words were clean, no static. Holloway's voice at peace, then a second voice, colder. I'll wait.
Then wait forever.
He hooked the mic back and turned the ignition. The radio died, but the silence no longer felt like a threat. He pulled away, the highway unwinding behind him like a tired snake. For the first time in a year, he didn't check the mirror. A mile down the road, James pulled onto a scenic overlook, the valley dark below. He killed the engine and reached for his phone. He propped it against the dash, camera facing him. The red record light blinked like a heartbeat.
My name is James Hartley. I was a tow truck driver for 20 years. This is about a black sedan and the thing that hides inside it. If you see it on the highway, any highway, don't stop. Don't answer the CB. Don't take the call. It feeds on fear, but you can starve it. Just drive away.
He stopped the recording and stared at the screen. His thumb hovered over the post button, then pressed it. The video went live. No fanfare, just a quiet upload into the web's endless noise.
That's all I can do. The rest is up to whoever finds it.
Some truths don't need a crowd. They just need to be spoken. He drove on, the radio silent, the road ahead clear. Years later, in a quiet house at the edge of town, James sat at the dinner table with his family.
His brother-in-law laughed, spinning a tall tale about a haunted tow truck he'd read online. Tales. They never get it right, but at least they're talking about it now.
His wife touched his shoulder. No words passed between them, but the understanding was complete. When the clock struck 8, his phone buzzed with a dispatch alert. He silenced it without a glance.
Some rules don't bend. The world doesn't need another ghost story.
He excused himself and stepped out to the garage. The night was cool, the street empty as always. No black sedan, no shadow, just the hum of a distant highway.
It's waiting, but not for me.
He closed the garage door and went back inside. The scar would always be there, but it no longer bled. Highway 9, mile marker 47. The The 3 wooden crosses stood weathered and barely visible in the dark. A new black sedan drifted to a stop on the shoulder. Its hazard lights began to blink. The driver's door swung open on its own. A cold, still air spilled out. A young woman in a bright jacket stepped out, oblivious, and bent over the engine. At the tree line, a tall silhouette stepped out of the shadow. It didn't walk, just shifted forward. Down the road, an amber strobe pulsed across the asphalt. The tow truck was coming. Her CB radio crackled with a faint, static-worn voice. "Need a tow?" She straightened, looking around, but the voice was gone, swallowed by the dark. The image froze on her unaware face. The amber strobe washed over her, then pulled away. The screen cut to black. Highway 9 waited, as it always would.